this opportunity to welcome Dr. Yogender Verma, who has been a very senior professor of management and working in the Himachal Pradesh University. Then he became Vice Chancellor of Himachal Pradesh, Central University of Himachal Pradesh, located in Dharamsala. He has devoted a lot of time in terms of development of the human resources as a director of HRDC of UGC for a long time. Then he has contributed significantly to through the field of higher education regularly in the form of articles, in the form of books, etc. Recently, he has been a member of the UGC Committee on Development of Institutional Development Plan Framework, along with Dr. Avinash Pandey, who spoke to you other day, and he has contributed in terms of development to the institutional development plan, and that is going to help us in developing the institutional development plan, keeping it with the new education policy. As Dr. Pandey said, it is reflecting on new education policy. Dr. Verma has been closely associated with this field for several years, and he has contributed significantly. Today, he's going to share with us the ins and outs of development of institution development plan. They have worked for almost a year on developing good framework, which is an exemplary. I always say this is an exemplary framework on the institution development plan. So with these words, I'll welcome Dr. Yogender Verma to initiate presentation. He is also having some kind of a PowerPoint presentation, which he can show it to us. And we'll continue till 8 o'clock. After 8 o'clock, we'll have a break of 10 minutes, and then we'll resume. So with these words, I welcome Dr. Verma and request him to make his presentation. Dr. Verma.
Thank you very much, sir, for this opportunity. And in fact, as you have rightly said, that we have worked for a longer time, and there are still many issues regarding institutional development plan. In fact, I have a presentation, but I am not able to present it. Anyhow, I will share with you. And as you told, sir, that Professor Pandey has already talked to respected principals. I will be touching certain points. Of course, this is a big document, but still it has been now reduced to maybe 30-35 pages. But the committee has worked a lot and in a very elaborate manner, because the idea is basically how to implement NEP. And for implementing NEP, the most important is that every institution should have development plan. And this development plan, when we look at NEP 20220 recommends that every institution should have a strategic plan. Strategic plan, that means for a longer time, maybe starting from 5 years or maybe more than 5 years. But that plan has to be split into year-wise. So NEP recognizes and gives more focus that the accreditation process should be carried out, and it can be carried out more effectively if every institution has institutional development plan. So how that plan should be developed? In fact, any plan which is jointly developed or formulated in a joint consultation by the stakeholders and with full participation, then of course that plan will be successful. Not only this, but NEP states that for funding purpose, you see, accreditation is very important. Regulation, accreditation, and then, of course, how effectively institution has been able to implement the plan which it has designed for its own self. So that way, the whole accreditation process is being further, you can say, modified or made more crispy and made more relevant, more objective, more transparent. So institutional development plan becomes very important. It also becomes very important because we are talking about holistic development of the personality of the students. And here a teacher is not merely a classroom lecturer, but a mentor, a counselor. So institutions that way must be equipped with the basic infrastructure as well as number of facilities, so that you see the classes, you can imagine, I think all the principals here, and they must have must be facing problems that how to go ahead with multiplicity and multidisciplinarity and the choices which the students have, whether it is having sufficient infrastructure, sufficient faculty, sufficient even the teaching facilities or gadgets, etc., etc., labs, spaces in the campus. So many things now get explored when we are talking about IDP, particularly in the context of new education policy. Now, when we talk about every classroom, then every classroom must be ICT enabled. So in a country like India, where we have still struggling to have sufficient bandwidth, internet facilities, or even electricity, it really becomes a challenge to develop a policy or to develop IDP. In fact, we have to very clearly define. We have to have very clear and proper understanding, not only about the infrastructure part, but very important aspect in IDP, of course, is the right type of teachers or the faculty to cope up with the challenges. And there have to be very transparent processes, and that's what NEP states. And more emphasis, what the focus is, outcome-based learning system. Outcome-based. So when we talk about outcome-based, that means now more emphasis is on having right type of faculty. So what should be the, we are talking about even the tenure based, the performance of the teachers. Salary structure is to be determined based on their performance, or even performance is to be assessed not merely by the seniors, but by the 360 degree what we talk, that is the peer reviews, students reviews, and whatever innovations the teacher has made in pedagogy, in quality, impact of research, or in professional development activities. So every education institution has to, or it needs to develop institutional development plan while keeping these all things into consideration. So it's a very, you can say that way, professional way of looking at how we can further improve the quality of education, but at the same time improving the GER ratio. Now we have around 26%, but we want to carry it to 50%. So how we can achieve that target also. And moreover, accrediting all the institutions, that's another challenge. So if there is IDP and institutions are already working on different aspects which are related with the accreditation, because accreditation and IDP, it is very much related. It is very much connected. It has a very close relationship. Because this IDP, when we are developing, well, we have to keep into consideration the accreditation process also. At the same time, accreditation agencies or the National Accreditation Council, which we are visualizing, which will be coming up. So that will also look into the guidelines of institutional development plan. And here, I must make it clear that IDP, the guidelines which have been prepared in a very broad perspective, keeping into consideration the emerging structures or which are visualized in NEP 2020. So when I'm talking about GER ratio, the challenge is, to maintain the quality too. And then when we are increasing or enhancing the number of students in the campuses, naturally there is a load. So load in the different terms, whether these are the spaces in the classroom, or these are the residential facilities, these are the laboratories. So number of things which are of course to be considered when we are preparing IDP. So these guidelines will help the institutions to prepare IDP while considering the accreditation, while considering the regulatory aspects. So for any institutions, of course, has to take into confidence or take the participation of the stakeholders. Maybe it is including the local community. At the same time, financial aspect is very important. That financial. So, all things when we were discussing and getting input, and maybe some of you must have given input on UGC website when this document was put for discussion. You see how to optimize not only the financial aspect, but spaces, the intellectual wealth, the technology, or what you can say, the internet. Even you see now the UGC says that 40% courses you can do online, or this mass open courses, MOOCs. So well, when these all things we have to consider when we are formulating IDP. Now, when we talk about the major components of IDP, the first very important thing is what are the objectives? So with the rationale which I'm talking about, the next thing becomes very important, the objectives of IDP. So what for? I will be taking up these objectives. Secondly is about the mission of the institution. Now every institution has been established with a mission. And I think now by this time we are very clear, and we have defined the institutions, universities and colleges, they have the mission or the vision. So this mission will guide the objectives, will guide about the activities which we are planning for the, maybe when we are talking about strategic IDP, or we are talking about the operational or short-term or annual based IDP. Then actually, In IDP, we have to make assessment, need assessment. And all of us are aware about the term SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges. So when we are looking into our mission, we are looking into the main objectives of IDP. Well, we have to find out the need assessment. So what is required to achieve our mission or the objectives? The institutions have to work for that, and that is possible, as I discussed with you, that we have consultations with the stakeholders, the expectations of the students, the guardians, or the community, or the government regulations. Those all aspects have to be kept into considerations, which will help the institution to identify the goals, priorities, and commitments. So what is expected of the institution, that will also be, of course, to be decided, and that will help in the need assessment. Then, of course, a very important thing is that here, in these guidelines, we have tried to be more specific. But when we are becoming more specific or target oriented, or you can say the numerical targets, such as etc., there comes a number of questions, because still things are very fluid. Things are not very certain yet until these verticals come and things are decided, because now we know there are many councils, and these councils, they have their own parameters. So it becomes very confusing. I think maybe some of you are facing when we discuss. I'm sure you will be sharing that pharmacy council says something different, AICTE says something different, UGC. So different councils, which will become later on standard setting institutions or standard setting bodies. So I think we had this problem. So we have given some tentative recommendations, and I think whatever at that moment is decided by these councils, of course, that will be applicable. So institutions' goals are to be specific, so target oriented. So in say when you are making a strategic plan for 5 years, no, we have to make targets. So time bound, that within what time what we will be achieving. And then of course human, financial, organizational resources or capacities, which are to be of course related with the goals. Now when we are talking about achieving a goal, naturally next question comes about the capabilities or the capacities of the institutions. That can be in terms of human resource, academic, administrative, in terms of finance, and their question comes of the government grants and the granting agencies, what criteria they follow. So naturally our targets must be accordingly set. Then of course when we are making this need assessment, the next thing which comes is that this analysis gives us certain gaps where how the institution will fill up those gaps, whether in terms of financial resources or maybe in terms of human resources, or the capabilities, or you see maybe internet or other infrastructural facilities. Then next, of course, is important. That is about the annual activity plans. So in first year, second year, third year, fourth year, because there are certain goals or objectives which cannot be realized in short term. So maybe 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years it may take. Now, when we talk about the objectives, once we have identified the developmental needs, and these development needs, as I was telling you, that we can broadly think in terms of academic, administrative, and infrastructure. So, of course, academic, administrative, these all things will also depend upon the infrastructure. So as I was sharing with you, that we have to be, you see, more pinpointed. We have to be specific about the existing resources we have. For example, land, and what type of land it is, where it is. Is it in a green field area, or it is in a brown field? Whether the institution is new or institution is old. You know, this type of institutions have a different challenges. So we have to pinpoint the objectives. So every institution, after making assessment, that making a, you could say, scanning of the environment, that what strengths you have, what weaknesses you have, what about the environment. When I'm talking about the environment, I'm talking about where the institution is located, about the space or the land available, what are other institutions around, so many factors. And that when we make a scan, we will find out that there are certain gaps, there are certain challenges. And then, of course, we have to have a very transparent system for the holistic development, maybe through digital technology. And digital technology is the one, I think, very important factor these days, which can also help us, the institutions, to optimize our physical resources, or even on intellectual resources. Maybe, we don't have specialists in the institutions, those who can interact directly, but we can hire them online, as well as now there is a lot of digital lectures, videos are available, which can be utilized. Then, of course, in the coming future, we are going to have internalization of higher education, globalization of higher education. So we have to prepare for the challenges, or whether it is a learning or unlearning, or you can say also how to compete and how to give better quality education. Then, of course, engagement of stakeholders, that's another very important in IDP. That there has to be meaningful or productive engagement of stakeholders in the development and the implementation of plan. When we are formulating the plan, simultaneously, we have also to design the system of monitoring, that how to monitor the implementation of this plan. So it's not that after 1 year we will look into the plan, or after 5 years, but it has to be simultaneous procedure or the systems. So with these broader objectives, now we can think we can start developing the institutional plan. So when you see up to this point, what I was trying to share with you, that of course institutional development plan is going to be very important aspect in any higher education institutions. As you are already aware that we are going to have broadly three types of institutions: teaching universities, research universities, colleges. So ultimately all colleges to be upgraded to degree granting autonomous colleges or degree granting institutions. So, well, any institutional development plan, IDP, and formulated keeping into consideration the mission and vision of the institution, as well as on the other side, accrediting agencies, funding agencies, like you see now, private and government institutions to be funded by grants council. So, well, now keeping these things in mind and of course broadly defining the objectives. Now, what are the steps which we have to take in developing IDP? I think the very important thing is that the key person, and here we have suggested that maybe a convener, a person who is dynamic, who has a broader vision, who has experience, well, he can take up this responsibility. And the next thing will be, of course, as I shared with you, carry out SWOT analysis, or we can call it SWOT also. That is strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats. So this will help us to assess the need. This will help us to give a word eye view of my strengths, my weaknesses, and what opportunities the institution is going to have in the future. And of course, the challenges. So this requires a lot of course, consultations, participations, discussions, which are to be properly documented. So in this document, of course, attempt has been made to elaborate. And the second part of IDP, which is just you can say some documents or some areas which become as a you may say model or as directions, or which can help the institution. So the first part of this document is of course the guidelines, and the second is that there are certain case studies also given which can help the institution to develop IDP. Now, based on of course the need assessment, of course we have to define the goals, priorities, and the commitment of the institution. We can have an initial draft of IDP with specific indicators and time-bound targets. You know, these guidelines broadly give us some ideas. But when it comes to formulation, then the institution has the responsibility to go for the specifics, because it depends upon where they are situated, what about the clientele, what about the students, because maybe Northeast has a different types of problems, South has a different type of challenges. So, of course, the institutions have to keep these things into mind. And this initial draft, which is prepared, must be shared with the stakeholders. After all, whatever the education we are imparting, that is going to the joint expectations of stakeholders. So this document must be shared and discussed. And after that, after taking the feedback and incorporating the feedback, IDP can be finalized. Now here, of course, when we are talking about a convener, that doesn't mean this is one person job. No, he is convening. That means you can have a group of people who have to work very hard because very minute details are to be incorporated in activities. Now, when you talk about strategic plan, you can be, you can give in a broader ways. You can generalize certain things also. But when it comes to annual plans, well, you can't do that. So you have to be specific. And that means not only specific, but very minute, very details are to be included and which are acceptable to the people, to the teachers, to the administration, and of course within the overall framework of whether this is government regulation, state government or central government, as well as the standard setting institutions or the bodies, the guidelines which they give, of course, they are to be incorporated. So, well, that's I think quite serious work that requires a lot of commitment of the institution and the people who are, of course, involved. We have to very specific, very minutely. So all activities are to be identified. All activities which will ultimately lead to the achievement of the goal. So here we have this annual activity plans. So when you are talking about maybe some department, academic departments, talking about laboratories, you are talking about the playgrounds. Now, for every you say this broader area, we have to have a very specific and detailed activities. So, in a way, in a accumulated manner, it will become a, of course, annual activity plan. When we talk about long-term or strategic goal, then of course, as we know that India has uh, adopted this SDG 4, which inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong opportunities for all. And this we have adopted that by 2030 we should be able to do. Inclusive, equitable, quality education and promote lifelong learning. So, well, these are the broader areas, of course, which will help us to define our strategic plan. And further, as far as our NEP is concerned, as well as general education policy, well, and I will use the word which Abdul Kalam, our former president, used to use, that is enlightened citizens. That we have to, of course, develop our citizens as really citizen of India. That is the enlightened citizens with the certain basic ethics, pluralism or democracy, and of course their specialization in different areas, and of course the mission. So we have to, that means in the short run we have a operating plan. In long run, we have a strategic plan. And this strategic must be based on these plans. Strategic plan must be based on the strategic goals. And that means, you see, ultimately the outcome. So academics, success of students, overall, you see, the graduation rates and retention, because there are many students, they leave in between. So how to really make education attractive and meet the aspirations of the students. Then we have to create environment, the culture, that's very important. So it becomes part of a strategic goal. That means provide opportunities, provide environment, or you can say ecosystem, where students, they can get the knowledge, they can get the skills, and experiential learning, which can make them fit in the areas which are emerging areas. So there are certain fields where, when I'm talking about the fields, that fields for employment, fields for entrepreneurship, where demand is more. So where there is more demand, now how, that means our system has to be very dynamic. That for these new demanded areas, demanded fields, naturally we have to have the skills or the knowledge or the manpower which suits. As we know that the contemporary position is that we are not able to get our students employment, because they do not fulfill what is required in the industry. So industry is always saying that, well, these graduates are not usable. So if they are not usable, definitely the employment is a challenge. So, well, creating this type of environment, which is more flexible, which is more dynamic, and having interaction with the industry. Another way, greatest challenge, I think, when we are talking about these all idealistic things, the ground reality is about the funding. So from where the funding will come. What about the fee structure? I think government must be thinking over it, and still, these verticals or the new infrastructure or the institutional structure has not come up. Now, how to really get the sources of funding? Because government institutions are almost, you can say, dried out, and many universities are not able to get manpower, and we know that more than 60-70% positions of teachers are vacant, even in the central universities or in institutions of premier importance or high importance. So what about the then when it comes to the private sector? I think it is better to say less because of course they are not able to sustain, and many universities, many private universities, they have closed down, or many colleges have been closed down, even the professional colleges I'm talking about. So identifying new sources of funding is going to be challenged. So howsoever ambitious plan we may have, but if the funding is not available, or adequate funding is not available, then perhaps that will not succeed. So now maybe institutions have to plan that from where to get funds. We talk about consultancy, we talk about industry collaboration. Well, or certain startups or incubation centers, etc., etc. Development of patents. I think that challenge will remains. Although philanthropy and partnership, public-private partnership, etc., these things are being talked. No, I think we have to wait, see how the things end. But I think that's every institution has to, because if it has to survive, now has to plan how to get financial sources. Then, of course, another area which is very much part of the strategic goal is there are students who belong to uh, underrepresented underrepresented category. So provide them access to education, quality education. That's another part which is important. Then, of course, employability is a major issue, as I discussed with you. Developing entrepreneurial skills with them so that they become self-reliant. I think many problems can be solved, and that is also suggested in NEP, that by networking of institutions. That will, whatever strength I have, I share with you and you share with other, and weaknesses can be filled up or can be removed by having some support from other institutions. So it is mutual, you can say the mutual. So institutional networks, I think that will very important aspect which has been recommended. And as I told you, the academia and industry partnership. So it can't be one way, it has to be two-way. And now, now UGC has come out with a scheme of industry professor. So, of course, that means bringing both academy and industry nearer. Another area where we can get a more funding as well as intellectual alumni and local community. In certain communities, in certain areas, we find that particularly when we talk about Gujaratis or such people, they are more liberal in giving donations or charity to the educational institutions. So of course, in this engagement of alumni in many institutions, I have seen that alumni they have contributed significantly, not only in terms of finance or developing labs or buildings, but also in terms of intellectual support, guidance, counseling, etc. So now we can't have just one time, or you can say a very specific plan, strategic plan. It has to be continuous process. So in that continuity, we have a number of again the things which you have to keep in mind. That in the coming years, if we are opening new courses, we are or closing down some or modifying, and then maybe about the number of students and the challenges coming from other institutions. So whole campus planning and development has to be a continuous process, which is, I think, is to be seen, and simultaneously, the sustainability and environmentally, you can say sustainable campuses. So that's a challenge, particularly in the urban areas. So even if you have some new areas where have institutions, but in long run, as we know that wherever there is university or a college, around that there comes out to be a colony, or there comes out to be uh, even the slums, or it come out the small towns. So in long run, of course, environment sustainability becomes very important. Now coming to other aspects which is very important, that is about the curriculum. So as you know, under NEP, when we are talking about the curriculum in UG, in PG, it is still, of course, many states, they have started, they have implemented NEP 2020. But if you see that it is only a temporary measure, that okay, you have declared that now you'll have 4 years UG program, or similarly PG program. Some they have not started PG. They say that, well, this UG class will go, then we'll start PG. Well, but when we come to full implementation, of course, we have to define overall curriculum objectives. So for the universities, for the autonomous colleges, because we are to lead to an excellence, and that way we have to bring about number of, when we are talking about IDP, now you can imagine how important it is that under the IDP, or this strategic IDP, you see everything in the institution is incorporated, is to be taken into consideration. Like you see, whether it is academic administration, and when we talk about academic administration, naturally we have a capable people, including the top persons like vice chancellors, or principals, and then heads of departments. So they must be fully trained to cope up this commitment to IDP. Similarly, examination reforms, because now we are expecting with the new changes, of course, and all of you know that we have a academic bank of credit, then credits also. So number of things are happening in the examination pattern too. And then about the infrastructural development. So when we talk about IDP, many people are more giving emphasis on infrastructure development. I think that is true also, because until you have facilitating infrastructure, or you have enough or appropriate structure, then we may not be able to do justice. And as I told you that there are many knowledge hubs. Institutions have to develop linkages with these knowledge hubs, or the stakeholders, about which, of course, I was discussing with you. Very important aspect in IDP will be, of course, automation. So whether this is a hardware or this is a software, automation at different levels, management of resources, or use of technology in education. So during Corona time, of course, we have done a lot. And I think that is the contribution of this pandemic, that we have gone more online. Otherwise, we used to argue, whether we should go online or we should go for virtual classes or blended classes. Only this discussion or this controversy continued, but now there was no choice. So we had to go for it. and now it has become a compulsory. So what I see that many institutions, even human resource development centers, where we used to say that it's not possible. You have to have personal interaction, sensitization sessions. Only then a person can be educated. But now situation is different. That we are coming out with the alternative uh, technology which enables us to interact or create sensitization even. Greatest challenge, is manpower management. Manpower. Now the teachers who are trained for a specific subject, but now he has to have multidisciplinarity, dealing with students with the different types of uh, backgrounds. Not only this, becoming more friendly with the use of technology, taking up many activities like, for example, mentoring. That now mentoring, we say that, okay, you are a mentor and you have to mentor. Are we into the principles or the concept of mentoring? Most of us not. So we say, okay, mentor is mentor. So even counseling and the role of a teacher, which is of course changing with time. No, it is not a merely lecturer, but he is more a facilitator. And I would like to say that he is more a resource person because he has to facilitate and most of the material or the learning resources are available. So he has to be facilitator. And now we talk about the flipped classrooms, that many things where students have access to correct knowledge or more knowledge, and we come prepared and the classroom becomes just a place for discussion. So, well, manpower management is very important. And when it is becoming so professional, naturally the principal, and this is a very good situation then that the Professor Sharma, he has been doing this work since long. And I'm so happy that even at this age, he has taken this challenge and helping all of you. Great, sir. I really hats off to you. And that gives a lot of motivation to all of us also that continue. And he's so contemporary with the whole thing. So, sir, I think as per your schedule, I think we can close and then we meet again for
Right.
discussion and further. Right, sir?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Professor Verma has covered a larger ground from beginning of how to go about institutional development plan. He has been all the time very c- c- state making a statement that it has to be very specific. When you are going for the annual plan, you have to be very specific. It should be quantitative as well as qualitative. That's the very important point he has made. He has also made that the other forces which are there, stakeholders, etc., they have to be taken into account. He also covered a larger ground in terms of the finances, which is going to be our next module, 03 module on finances. We started with the leadership, then we are coming to close with the planning, and from planning we take it to finances. He covered larger ground of finances, even discussing about the how to mobilize funds, how to get the funds. He also made comments on the verticals of UGC which are going to come and grant giving system is going to come. I think he has covered much larger ground in the development of institutional development plan, and he has given a very specific and very nuanced type of thing how what type of things you should take care of, particularly when he talked about the SWOT analysis. When he talked about SWOT analysis, he talked about taking the help of the stakeholders. He has talked about the major thing that we are following the Millennium Development Goal SDG 4, that is a global policy, and global policy is coming to national policy getting implemented through the institutional development plan. I think Professor Verma, you covered a very large ground, and I'm sure all the participants must have benefited strongly. We have 2-3 minutes, and then we'll break for the 10 minutes break. Any question, any point which you have right at this hour, I can invite you. We have 5 minutes on this aspect, then we break for 10 minutes. Yeah. Hello? Manoj? Who is raising hand? Manoj or yeah, I think there is a call. I'll wait. Yeah, Mohammed Ali has joined now. He was traveling. Yes, Bodhe Gogoi, you wanted to raise some question. Then we'll break
Yes,
for
sir.
10 minutes.
Yes, sir. So it was a very nice presentation, and sir has covered new education policy at large and also how to implement it. We have learned a lot. So I would like to know from you one point, that is, so far as Indian higher education is concerned, it is not at all suitable for the 21st century. And very rightly, India government has developed this IDEL policy, and it is need of the hour to implement it. And you very rightly, sir, pointed out the strengths and weaknesses of the present education policy, national education policy. And one point you have cited, there is called philanthropist, role of the philanthropist. And so far as the Indian situation is concerned, sir, in last we have seen after liberalization, privatization, and globalization economy, at least 25%, or if not, then 20% Indians became. But philanthropy's contribution for the development of education is very poor. So you please make a, observation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Gogoi, you raising the question. Any other point? Any other person like to raise? Manoj, would you like to ask some question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Manoj.
Sir, I am practically speechless, and thanks to Professor Verma sir for giving such a nice deliberation on almost all the aspect of institutional development plan. So thank you very much, sir, for your presentation. Sir, you have covered almost all the aspects, but I have a small question that is relating to the whenever we are talking about the NEP 2020, it is obviously a pan-Indian concept, and considering the diversity, geographical, political, as well as economic consideration of different regions, whether how far it will be practicable to, or how far we can be able to implement the NEP 2020 under these geo-economic differences of different regions of the country. Sir, please.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Manoj. You have raised he has covered this when he said the Northeast region needs something, other regions,
Yes, sir.
other
Yes.
things.
Exactly.
He covered.
Exactly.
But he's going to talk to you. Any other question? Then we break and then reassemble, and then we'll request Professor Verma to respond. Any other question? Yeah.
Sir, I will raise my points after the break, sir. I have
Okay. Now we are ready for the break.
So you can have
We will
you can have
break
a cup
for
of
10
tea.
minutes. Yeah, we'll break for 10 minutes and then reassemble at 8:10. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, we break for 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.